produce this diagram, which I'd like to walk you through. I want to get started first by just centering us around performance concepts. Because when we look at the request, I mean, when I talk to you, the request is really, there's this general worry about performance. Is NetSuite performing well in general? Can we scale when we add new integrations? And why is it taking 10 seconds to load a sales order? And these are all good questions, but there are different aspects of performance. So I think to answer those questions or give insights, we need to first get grounded in what exactly are the domains of NetSuite performance. And so I'd like to walk you through three main areas, and then we'll deep dive each one of them and just highlight the main findings in those areas, and then end with a conversation about an architecture that we're proposing that would help us leverage the investment we've made in NetSuite. But first, let me get you centered on this. So there are three areas we look at performance. The integration concurrency is one key metric on one side here. And what that really tells me, if you think of this as a highway into NetSuite, the integration concurrency tells me how many lanes are on this highway and how fast can I get data into the system. So in your case, I mean, Boomi is the main integration system. And so, it's the question here the question we're trying to answer is how fast can we get data from Boomi or any other application into NetSuite? You guys are on the ultimate tier and you have right now 90 integration, let's say lanes. So your concurrency is 90 out of a maximum of 140. So if you maxed out everything NetSuite had to offer, you'll be sitting at 140. Beyond that, I don't know if NetSuite doesn't really have any offering, at least that is declared publicly. So you're really high. You have a lot. You have a lot of lanes. That's the first thing to say here. We'll get back into this when we zoom in later on. Now we get all this data into NetSuite, and then the next concern, our focus would then shift into, well, we have all this data in NetSuite. How fast can we process it? And that's where the Suite Cloud processors and that concept comes into play. So the Suite Cloud processors are a NetSuite solution for concurrency, for doing things in parallel. And if you think of it from other programming concepts, you can think of threads. Like if you're a Java programmer, you say, how many threads do I have? How many things can I run in parallel? The interesting thing to note here, though, is not every process can benefit from more from parallelism, right? So if your process has to one be lean itself to being parallelized, and then the implementation also has to leverage the parallelism. So if I just had 20 cores and I have code that is not able to use them, the 19 cores are going to be wasting, and we're just going to be on one of them. So here the key is looking at the process, understanding which ones are key, and then trying to make sure that we're able to leverage the performance. The other thing to mention here, Eric, is that this only applies to background processes. So schedule scripts, MapReduce scripts. This doesn't affect what happens when you view a sales order or when you view any record. That's a very different performance concern, which is in this third domain. So more cores is not going to make your records load faster. They're just separate aspects. Then let's move to the last aspect, the last domain of performance. So this is the area of your business process automation and customizations. And we can further zoom into three aspects. What affects how slow a page loads in NetSuite in general? One of them obviously is the infrastructure. NetSuite runs the servers, they're moving everybody to OCI, etc. So OCI would generally help with database latency because with OCI, the server is probably closer to you than before. NetSuite doesn't say so much about the architecture, so we can only speculate in this domain. I've marked it as red because I'm saying here we have the least control. There's so little we can do in terms of NetSuite's database choices and NetSuite server locations, all that stuff. It's up to them. We let them take care of that. Then you have the network, your connection to the internet. I know you mentioned one of the calls that at some point you had this issue and it turned out just the Wi-Fi wasn't strong enough. That's an obvious performance factor that could slow things down in general. But if that's the case, you would generally see it across all users in a particular location, etc. So we have some control over there. That's your domain. So there's nothing to explain to you here. And then the last one where we have the most control is the customizations we build. Whether those we get from bundles that other people have built, whether it's Prolecto bundles or other third parties, or the account-specific customizations that developers or business analysts creating the accounts. And if we zoom into that, we also look at three levels. You have the workflows, point and click tool, that with which you can customize the behavior of the system. And then you have scripts, some of them running on the server, some of them running in the browser, which NetSuite calls client-side scripts. And then you also have an aspect of custom forms and fields. what this really means is sometimes a page might load slowly because you have just too many custom fields, and NetSuite is trying to read all that data and show it to you. And so sometimes you can improve performance by just looking at the form and saying, well, do I need all these 50 fields on the form? No, you hide them, and then you could see a performance improvement. I don't think that's the case with your account. I saw lots of fields, especially on transactions, but when I looked at some transactions, they were not all visible in transactions. But that's an area that one could look into. So I'd like to stop here in terms of high level. I took a bit of time to explain because I think this will help you understand. Now next time, don't let anybody sell you more cloud processors to to make your records load faster. It just won't work.
Yeah,
Or
and
the
that's
other way
the
around,
only
right?
lever I've been able to pull before I met you and team.
Take you into the next part of the conversation, which is in order to get the real scalability of it, you have to go to an advanced technique that we're going to talk to you about, for which you're going to find fewer people understand.
So I'd like to change gears here now. Let's look at an approach to conceptual approach to high performance data processing in NetSuite. So most times the conversation is around getting more of these or more of that, but what we're offering is a different way of thinking about the problem and saying really what you want to do in general, an external system, let's say MES, whatever it is, what you want to do in general is to get raw data into NetSuite as fast as you can and let NetSuite do the heavy lifting asynchronously. What that means in general is where today we're trying to create transactions, we're trying to create an assembly build, we're trying to create a sales order directly on the interface, and we're running into all these performance issues because NetSuite, their customizations, their things slowing it down. A different way of thinking about it is saying, give me the data I need, give me the JSON or whatever format of the data I need to create that record. NetSuite is good at creating custom records. Those are faster, way faster than transactions. And if we need to, we can batch them up. I could get one, Boomi can write me 100 records in one batch, just as plain text. We store that in NetSuite, and then, we keep these guys busy because instead of trying to solve the problem at the interface, we get the data in and then we keep the processors busy. That's one way to utilize processors because this approach of trying to do it directly means we bypass the workhouse we have here, and that's where the loss is happening. That's a general way of thinking about it. As we're going into the MES project, we want to also start thinking about how we can leverage this. The other integration you mentioned is a good example. NetSuite is timing out. I'm pretty sure NetSuite wouldn't time out when you're sending it raw data and batching it up. It would be able to create that quite fast, and then you can do the heavy lifting offline, and not offline, but asynchronously.
So what this
And
does,
that way you keep on you gain the most performance, and you can keep on increasing this as you see you're hitting your bottlenecks, because this is really where NetSuite has the power.
So let me try to regurgitate what I think you just told me. Is instead of throwing a sales order at NetSuite and telling NetSuite to go create a sales order,
Right.
you want to do a CSV upload of data and then transact to create a sales order, something like that?
Yeah, not even a CSV upload. Imagine you give me a JSON that describes 100 sales orders. You give me that JSON at once with all the information I need to create the sales order. You can still do it via Boomi. I've worked on integrations where they do that. And then you give me that blob at once. It will be create one record to store this blob of, that usually represents 100 sales orders or 1,000 sales orders or whatever number we can get to. And then in NetSuite, I unpack that and I create those sales orders. Now, if you give me a blob of 1,000 here, right, I could create 35 in parallel, because here I have 35 cores. So for the time you're trying to create 1,000 sales orders one by one, now I can do it way faster here.
So you're just creating a custom table. Let's just call this one sales orders. So you're going to create this custom table called sales orders, and then you're going to import JSON at whatever into this table. Then you're going to run a script or something that says, go to that table and make these sales orders.
Something that's one way. It could be a file. Yeah, it could be a custom record. You could just write to the file cabinet. Those are the granular details of how you want to get this data in. But conceptually, yeah, that's what it is. Get the data raw, get it in. NetSuite can take that in fast and then do the work, create the business records asynchronously.
Has this been proven out? Have y'all done this before?
Very much so.
Definitely.
This is how we scale our largest clients. So for example, Once
Mhm.
we took them to these patterns, we totally have been able to get them to get without a hitch in their Black Friday, highest things being hit. Everybody's happy now. What you have to do though is you have to start to just introduce a concept of a little bit of latency. And it's the question is how much latency, because you're now those side systems are pumping in data, just lots of data is coming in. They're happy as a clam. Now the question then is okay, now when you're ripping apart the data to get it to create those business records, how much time is that taking? And that's where you then do tuning in that area there. And then that's really for you, it's really leveraging the investment you made in all those queues. You're not using any of that power.
Well, I guess I love the idea and this, but I'm thinking, okay, so this is happening. You're gonna use the power of NetSuite to transact, but let's say there's 1,000 orders, that sales orders you're trying to create using the power of NetSuite. Does that slow down the 400 people that are transacting within NetSuite? Like, does it slow down the entire instance by doing that?
No, that this is where you have all those queues in the map. The map reduce layer really is kind of like a batch system. It's a way to sort of think about it. So what you're basically doing is using this power here. It runs independent of all the stuff the users are doing. The users are in a different layer completely. They don't notice any of that stuff running.
Okay.
And we can work with your developers to teach them how to do this.
I like it. I like it.